Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a look at some more Rastakhan's Rumble cards, because they just keep coming. Over the past couple of days another 20 new cards have been revealed, and we have stuff for Thief Priest and Enrage Warrior and Beast Druid. All sorts of archetypes are getting support, so let's venture into the task and see what kind of cards have been revealed now. First, a new neutral epic card, Masked Contender, a 3-mana 2/4 with a battle cry: if you control a secret, play a secret from your deck. The wording on this is a bit different than it used to be on the Mad Scientist, which immediately prompted people to question, okay, if it plays the secret, does it buff the Hunter Spellstone? But unfortunately, Peter Whalen told us on Twitter that nope, it doesn't. That makes it a slightly weaker card, but it still might have some potential, because it draws a card and plays that card, and that's obviously a very powerful effect. I don't think it's quite on the level of Kirinto Mage, for example, in Mage, the battle cry to play a secret for 0, but you might see this in Secret Mage, it might be seen in some aggressive Secret Hunter builds. It is slightly weakened by the fact that most secrets that are currently being played are activated quite quickly. Mage uses counter spells, explosive runes, there's no more ice blocks and things like this, which could guarantee that there's going to be a secret in play for when this is played. But the effect is still very strong. We also got a new rogue card, Walk the Plank, a 4-mana spell, destroy an undamaged minion. So it's cheaper than Assassinate, it has a condition. But does Rogue want to use this? It could see play in something like an Even Rogue. Even Rogue doesn't have access to a lot of hard removal. But overall Rogue is pretty happy with Sap, great tempo play. I'm pretty happy with Wildspine Slayers, hard removal, together with a minion, and Rogue really loves those minions. One thing Walk the Plank could do is that with Galvanizer and Preparation, it could enable a Mechatoon combo. And Rogue is pretty fast at drawing the deck, so there is some potential also for a Mechatoon Rogue here. An interesting card that doesn't fit into the most commonly played Rogue archetypes right now, because they currently have better options, but there might be new archetypes that are enabled by this card. We're getting some anti-aggro stuff too. Rabble Bouncer, a 7-mana 2/7 taunt that costs 1 less for each enemy minion. So if your enemy has a full board, this one comes out for free. Unfortunately, most of your enemies will not have full boards. And most of your enemies also will not have very wide boards early in the game, because this only has 2 attack. So if the opponent has a lot of minions later on, okay, 7 health still means that it might be 2 minions that have to hit into it in order to be able to trade, but the 2 attack means that this is not able to trade in return. So why would you play this when you could play something like a Dark Reaper instead? There's been a similar card before in Hearthstone, the Second-Rate Bruiser, currently in Wild format, which was a 5-mana 4/5 that costs 2 less if your opponent has at least 3 minions. And Second-Rate Bruiser saw some play, but even that was by far not a staple card. And it had a lot more attack, so it was actually useful in other things than defending against very token type of boards. So I don't expect Rabble Bouncer to make the cut. Another card that I really don't see making the cut is the Soup Vendor, a 2-mana 1/4. Whenever you restore 3 or more health to your hero, draw a card. Okay, drawing cards is nice. 4 health for 2 mana, it has some survivability, but who's going to restore 3 or more health? I mean, Odd Priest could do it, but this is an even cost card. Paladin can't do it with True Silver Champion or anything, so it just doesn't look like Soup Vendor has the cards that would synergize with it to get that card draw. And that 1 attack also means that this card is not going to be able to remove any of the opponent's threats. Mage players, especially Odd Mage players, have some reason to be ecstatic. We're getting a new big spell. Odd Mage has really missed a big odd cost spell. Okay, they have Dragon's Fury, they have Flame Strike. Then they have to choose between Luna's Pocket Galaxy and Deck of Wonders if they want to add more spells. But Blast Wave, 5 mana, deal 2 damage to all minions, AoE, sweet, Odd Mage likes AoE. Overkill, add a random mage spell to your hand. So if there's a bunch of 1 health minions on the board, then for each 1 health minion that this kills, you get a random mage spell to your hand. That means that there are some potential applications. Let's say you might even have spell damage and this, and you want to use Open the Way Gate. That's another potential application for this card, but the main application that I see is going to be Odd Mage decks, and Odd Mage is getting Janalai the Dragonhawk, which we have reviewed earlier, which summons that sweet Ragnaros the Firelord for you. So there's certainly demand to playing Odd Mage, and this card fits right in. We're getting a new version of Zombie Chow. Zombie Chow used to be a staple in control decks, a 1-mana 2/3 that does Death Rattle heal to your opponent for 5, and control deck couldn't care less. Healing an aggro deck for 5, no big deal at all. Serenite Taskmaster, 1-mana 2/3, as a Death Rattle it summons a 0/3 free agent with Taunt for your opponent. And this actually is not quite as good as Zombie Chow, because giving a 0/3 for your opponent, currently aggro decks run a bunch of buffs, such as Fungal Mancers or Cobalt Scalebanes. So if you're trying to defend yourself as a control deck with the Serenite Taskmaster, you just might end up giving your opponent nice buddies to buff. On the other hand, if you're trying to be aggressive with the Serenite Taskmaster, you're giving your opponent 3 health essentially, by giving them that 0/3 taunt minion. Still, I would think that Serenite Taskmaster is better suited for aggressive decks than it is for control decks right now. Because for a control deck, that cost of giving your opponent a minion, when many decks have buffs in them, I think it's too big. We're getting a couple of new Shaman spells, and I thought they would be best discussed together. There's a 3-mana Haunting Vision. Next spell you cast this turn costs 3 less, discover a spell. And there is a new damage spell, and it doesn't say a minion, it can go face. 1 mana, Totemic Smash, deal 2 damage, overkill, summon a basic totem. But who cares about overkill, it can go face. So what these cards do is that they just might be able to bring Malygos Shaman back. Malygos Shaman has had a bit of a difficulty in getting damage through. I mean, there's Frost Shock and there's Lightning Bolt, and you can Eureka Malygos on the board for 6 mana, then you have 4 mana to cast spells, so you can jam those 1 mana spells. With Frost Shocks and Lightning Bolts you can deal 28 damage. With Lightning Bolts and Totemic Smashes you can deal 30 damage. And it gives you some redundancy in your deck, because then you would have 6 damage spells that you can use, you only need 4. So even though it still looks difficult for Malygos Shaman to come back, but Totemic Smash is definitely something it needs, because it desperately needed damage that can go face. And Haunting Vision might also be related to this, because Haunting Vision discovers a spell, it discovers one of those direct damage spells around 1 in 5 attempts, but it also can discover you spells that can help you stall, and essentially if you're planning a spell turn, Haunting Vision is free. Because if you're going to cast a spell anyway, if you're going to cast a spell that you don't discover for Haunting Vision, it costs 3 less, Haunting Vision costs 3, so it costs the original cost. Or you might just discover that spell that you need from Haunting Vision directly. So interesting cards for Malygos Shaman, maybe interesting cards for something like an aggro Shaman. And Haunting Vision alone might even make it into various control Shaman builds. Very interesting card. Blizzard is also pushing Thief Priest, and they're pushing it hard. We already saw Von Samdi and the Spirit earlier, and now there's Princess Talanji. 8 mana 7/5 with a battle cry, summon all minions from your hand that didn't start in your deck. So anything that creates copies, anything like that, it's not from your deck, even if it's a copy from a minion that originally was in your deck. And then Princess Talanji on the board and boom, get a bunch of stuff out there. Definitely a potent win condition. What kind of deck could use this? This could be in something like a Steel Priest, you could use stuff like Torch Steels, and you might actually use Holy Water. Holy Water has never seen any play, because deal 4 damage to a minion, if that kills it, add a copy of it to your hand, just is not the type of effect Priest has wanted. But with the new synergy, maybe there's enough. Or maybe it's a win condition in something like a really slow control priest that runs something like Archbishop Benedictus. Because with Benedictus you shuffle a copy of your opponent's deck into your deck, and then you start drawing those cards, and you draw a bunch of minions, and you slam Talanji, and all those minions come right out of your hand. So if there is a way to slowly grind a game, then Princess Talanji might be a win condition for a deck like that. we're getting a new neutral Murloc, Murloc Tasty Fin, a 4-mana 3/2 with a death rattle to draw 2 Murlocs from your deck. 3/2 stat line for 4 mana is really weak, and to be honest I don't think this card is good enough to see play, because Murloc decks in general, they are very tempo oriented. You want to keep pushing, those Murlocs are not going to last forever, and if you use your 4 mana turn, or any turn using 4 mana, to summon a 3/2 stat line Murloc, that's a really weak tempo play. So even though it gives you more Murlocs for the following turns, I don't think it's strong enough to see play. Warrior is getting a new weapon, and this one is interesting. Overlord's Whip. 3 mana 2/4. After you play a minion, deal 1 damage to it. And the card that came to my mind immediately when I saw this weapon, I haven't seen it discussed elsewhere, is the Phantom Freebooter. Phantom Freebooter, 4 mana 3/3, Battlecry, gain stats equal to your weapons. So Phantom Freebooter has chance to be a really big minion for 4 mana, and the main problem of Phantom Freebooter has been its health. Typically you have a weapon with 1 charge left, and then Phantom Freebooter is going to have 4 health, and that simply is not going to cut it. But with Overlord's Whip, if you don't use it at all, Phantom Freebooter, 7 health, takes 1 damage, still has 6. Even if you use 1 charge, Phantom Freebooter still 5 health. Now that is an impressive 4-drop. Not to mention Overlord's Whip together with stuff like Frothing Berserker, or thanks to that 4 durability, Overlord's Whip with something like Captain Greenskin and other weapon buffs. Give it attack, give it durability. There might be something to this sort of Enrage or even a Pirate Warrior, thanks to this weapon. I keep being puzzled by Druid cards. The new Druid Spirit, 1 mana Spirit of the Raptor, stealth for 1 turn, 0/3 stats like all spirits. After you kill a minion with your hero, draw a card. For some reason this synergy just seems pretty weak in general. We already saw Savage Striker earlier, which is a 2 mana 2/3 Battlecry, deal damage to an enemy minion equal to your hero's attack, and I just couldn't figure out how to use that. There must be some Druid cards that are still unrevealed that will give some sense to this. But Spirit of the Raptor does have one upside to it, which is Odd Druid. If you use that with Baku the Moon Eater, and you play Spirit of the Raptor on 1, and then on 2 you use your hero power and you can deal 2 damage with that, then you actually have a chance to kill stuff with that, and you might even want to do that, and you get to draw more cards. But things get even more puzzling because Savage Striker is an even cost card, so it doesn't fit in that deck. But maybe there is something to Odd Druid with the help of the Spirit. In the category of weird neutral legendary minions, we have Griftah. It's a 4 mana 4/5, so it has good stats. It's Chillwind Yeti. Those are not bad stats. And the effect, Battlecry, discover 2 cards, give 1 to your opponent at random. This is scary effect. I'm not sure who is most scared about it, you or your opponent actually. Because if you discover 1 good card and 1 bad card, then you roll the dice 50-50 who gets what. Things get a bit more interesting when you and your opponent are playing different types of archetypes. So if you're playing an aggressive deck and you pick up 2 aggro minions, okay, so the opponent gets an aggro minion but they might not be able to use it, so you get an aggro minion, you're able to use it. Or if you're playing a control deck and you pick 2 control cards and your opponent gets a control card and they don't have any use for it and you get a control card, you can also input a card to your opponent's hand, so you might be able to make them overdraw. You might be able to counter like a Mecha Toon with this by giving your opponent a card that they cannot play. I don't know, the effect seems really weird and extremely unreliable. But because it is well-statted minion 4 mana 4/5, that means that in theory you can fit this in almost any archetype. So I'm sure people will give this a try and then wonder about the strange things that are going to happen. Mage is getting a board clear. Wait, that doesn't sound very novel at all. But this board clear is a minion. Arcanosaur, a 6 mana 3/3 elemental with a Battlecry. If you played an elemental last turn, deal 3 damage to all other minions. So no mage deck like Big Spell Mage or anything like this would ever want to run this card, because mage has a lot of board clear spells. But there are mage decks that run Book of Spectres, so a purely minion based elemental mage with Book of Spectres. Definitely interested. You can get a board clear effect, that's nice. You don't have to put any spells in your deck, that's nice. How good the archetype is going to be, I'm not really sure. But there is a niche for this type of card, and it is in these Book of Spectres decks. A new paladin weapon, Faraki Battle Axe. A 5-mana 3/3 with overkill, give a minion in your hand +2/+2. Hand buff is not a very strong mechanic. Typically hand buff has succeeded when you're able to choose what gets hand buffed, or if you're hand buffing your entire hand, that sort of thing, so Faraki Battle Axe looks like it's in a pretty rough spot. Also, it's difficult to activate the overkill. Sometimes it has 3 attacks, so you have to kill something with 2 health. Paladin Hero Power might be able to help with that, because Paladin can usually get in some chip damage and then finish off with the Battle Axe, so there are some things that you can do with this. But there's also some fierce competition, because Valandir is just way better. So I'm not sure. Faraki Battle Axe was one of the more difficult cards to evaluate from this bunch, because I can clearly see that there is potential in it, but it also looks like it's too weak to actually realize that potential. Grim Rally is a new Warlock spell. 1 mana, destroy a friendly minion, give your minions +1/+1. So this is clearly a 2 kind of deck card. That +1/+1 buff to all your minions, it's not good enough for something like a Q-Block. Q-Block is not really interested in that sort of thing. It's 2. It's tokens. Unfortunately, Zoo has been struggling with tokens for a long time now. Back in the day, Zoo actually was a token deck at one point, with the help of cards like Imp Gang Boss and Implosion, but these cards are currently in wild format only. So if you think about standard format, maybe there's a way to build something like Egg Zoo, so you put in Devilsaur eggs and then you eat them up with the Grim Rally. But we kind of already tried that with the Ravenous Terror Daxes, and it was just very difficult to make Zoo work as a token deck. The current way to create those tokens for Zoo is the heal synergy, where you heal stuff and play some happy ghouls. Maybe you could have Egg in that deck, and maybe you could have Grim Rally in that deck. There is potential, but the issue on how to create as many tokens as possible has to be solved first. The new Shaman Spirit is Spirit of the Frog. It's 3 mana, stealth for 1 turn and 0/3 stats like all spirits, and whenever you cast a spell, draw a spell from your deck that costs 1 more. I'm really so far not sold on the Spirit of the Frog. It is stealth for 1 turn, so you can probably get some kind of a spell curve off afterwards, but really, is it that much better than a Manatide Totem? This one is something that we really need to get the full set to see. Dragon Warrior was coming, we all saw that, there were dragon buff cards going, and now we have a new neutral dragon that can also be put in stuff like Dragon Priest. The neutral dragon unfortunately cannot go face, that's a bit of a downside, but 7 mana 7/4 dragon with a battle cry, if you're holding a dragon, deal 7 damage to an enemy minion. There are lots of 7 health minions in this expansion, and 7 damage overall is quite a lot, so Crowd Roaster is almost always going to kill something, even something big. And it's a 7/4 body, so that means that it's pretty easy to trade into, but it also has to be traded into because that 7 attack is quite intimidating. Overall, very nice card. It is a fairly expensive card at 7 mana, but it does have an immediate effect, and that's what you really want from expensive cards, and this one removes a minion and creates a threat at the same time, so definitely an interesting card for dragon decks. It might even support a control Dragon Warrior archetype that would not be so interested in going face, but that would be very interested in removing stuff. Are you ready for Big Beast Druid? Because here comes Stampeding Roar. A 6 mana druid spell, summon a random beast from your hand and give it rush. Finally, we can cheat out Tyrannus already at 6 mana, which we're going to have on like turn 4 or something. We're after all playing druid. And imagine trying to come back from that. Or alternatively we cheat out Undasta and we kill something with that, and that summons Tyrannus. Wow, the possibilities. Big Beast Druid is looking really interesting. On the subject of Big Beast Druid, we're also getting a Beast Tutor. Predatory Instincts, a 4 mana spell, Draw a beast from your deck, double its health. So you might think about, okay, I want to tutor a Hadronox, but why would you want to tutor a 3/14 Hadronox that is very, very difficult to kill? That might be a bit of a problem. And there's also the thing that Druid already has a lot of card draw. You have Ultimate Infestation, you have Nourish, you have Branching Paths. Do you really need a card that only draws one card, even though it is a specific card, it's a beast? But what makes this interesting, I was already going to say originally that this is actually pretty bad, but then I saw Stampeding Roar. Because Stampeding Roar summons a random beast from your hand. Ondasta summons a random beast from your hand. And with all these summon beast from hand effects, it might actually in some circumstances be useful to be able to tutor beasts specifically, although I'm not convinced that it's going to be better than card draw in general, so we'll have to wait and see. Warrior is also getting some beasts. They don't want to let Druid be the only beast class. So there is Akali the Rhino, an 8 mana 5/5 beast with Rush and Overkill. Draw a Rush minion and give it +5/+5. This is really a card that has me thinking, because that 5 damage on turn 8 is not a whole lot. You have to find a 4 health minion to kill with Akali in order to get that effect. But the effect is pretty sweet. Draw a Rush minion and give it +5/+5, so if you can draw Ondasta, if you can draw 9/9 Darius Crowley, if you can draw an 8/7 Ziliax. Some people have already speculated about putting this in a Dead Man's Hand warrior and just having Akali and then shuffling more Akalis into your deck and then using Akali to draw Akali, and then that will be a 10/10 Akali, which the next turn will draw another Akali. The stat line is pretty weak, but the card definitely has some potential. Those were all the newly revealed cards for now, so there's stuff for Beast Druids and Pirate Warriors and Thief Priests. This expansion looks like it's going to support a ton of different archetypes, and it will be very interesting to get to brewing and see which ones of those are actually going to be viable. More new cards are being revealed all the time, so stay tuned for more card reviews in the coming days. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more.